Oof. I could go for an 80-degree week. Hold on, we'll have to get the truck back.
Meeting will come to order. We have public comment.
Can we get these meetings changed to 6 o'clock, 6:30? People I talk to, they're not even home from work yet.
Well, we had them at 6 o'clock. Did we agree to try them or did we commit to, I don't
We
know.
voted to hold them at 5 o'clock until daylight savings time. That is pretty much a function of something Patricia needed, and we need to get a quorum. I would say that half the town works a shift that ends at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and the other half doesn't. When we moved it to 7, there was no public participation.
Well, yeah,
I actually, I did mention to the other board member that the 5 o'clock time is kind of difficult as well for me.
I think the only person that's good for it is me, frankly, because I'm already here. I work from 11 to 5, and it's wonderful, but that's not why I come here.
I wish we knew what Patricia's status was, but because she's the one that really wanted that. I didn't care to make it.
Well, she had a knee replacement, and I think she's in for 3 or 4 weeks of serious rehab. So I expect her participation will be remotely.
What you say, we make a motion to change the starting time to 5 o'clock until further deliberation with Patricia.
That's what it is.
To 6?
I'm 6
Wait a
o'clock,
minute.
sorry.
Until 6.
Yeah.
I would make the motion with pleasure, except that I would prefer to make it till 7, but I might not have the majority that way.
Well, we
I
could,
would prefer to make it to 7.
6 would be a good start.
why 7?
Why 7? Because most meetings are held at 7, and it gives people
But we're not.
time to put down their dinner a little bit.
Well,
Actually, I mean, that's basically true of the planning board, but not of any other town board. 7 is true, 7:30
Try it
is
for
true of
6
the
and
planning
see
board.
how that goes.
I'm sorry.
Can we try it for 6 and see how that goes?
Well, I'll make a motion to put it to 7, and I will accept a friendly amendment to 6. How's that?
Okay, I second and propose a friendly amendment to 6 o'clock starting.
Okay, I accept the amendment, and
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay. Any other public comment?
Was that for, was there a specific,
Starting with the next meeting.
I mean, there's not an end time, it's just, we'll see how it goes.
Right. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
That's both sets,
Yes,
just 2 sets. Madam Chair,
yes.
I'd like to announce to the public that yesterday Kay Maggie, Warwick's oldest resident, passed away. It's probably not easy for you to be meeting, so I just want to get that out there to folks.
This is mine,
So,
but I think it's best to just go on. That's what you would want.
My condolences.
Thanks.
So,
Why I'm in a little bit of a busy.
so on Sunday, there's a memorial?
Yeah, it'll be in the paper, but we're gonna have, I'm sorry, this is on the side. 1 to 3 will be viewing, a service at 3, and then reception here in the town hall at 4. Our
sorry, I did not hear the date.
Don't put this in the minute.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Where were we? Did we say 2 sets of minutes? Did you intend to approve 2 sets? Because we have 2 sets. Just to clarify.
I may have been absent at one of them, yes.
No, even after,
David took the minutes.
stop.
Then I was here earlier, and, okay, just to clear that it's, a motion to accept all 3.
2.
20th of January and the 11th of February.
Okay. That should be enough. Okay, chapter 268 exemptions.
I have 2 requests, and they relate to the Board of Health. The Board of Health's clerk has been quite ill and on temporary leave. And what I'm asking the board is to approve that the other Board of Health members be allowed to function as the acting clerk. There's about $102 a week for the clerk's salary. And they need to continue to have administrative support. And I don't know, I just got a request from co-chairman Whipple that this be done, and I don't know precisely whether it will be Lucinda or whether it will be Nancy Lyman or whether they will share it, but.
Do we need to do this now, or can we wait till?
Well, until this, the position is already special municipal employee, and what I'm looking for is a select board approval of the exemption under 268-20D that would allow them to be paid. And this situation's been going on quite a while, I'd like to see action.
Is there a motion? Yes.
Okay. What's the motion?
Motion would be to approve the special municipal employee exemption for Lucinda Stego and Nancy Lyman. Positions of Board of Health and Board of Health clerk are already special municipal employees.
Okay.
Before they draw any pay, I'll talk to town council, and I know that this is done with the assessor's office. It may be that they can't get, just as I can't get paid to be town coordinator and pull my $200 a year as town school board member. So I thought it over and decided not to take this one more than 200. So I won't let them get in.
Is this granting the 268-20D exemption or the special municipal employee?
This is the exemption. Now, those positions are already.
Yeah, that's what I thought you said.
We're gonna move that.
So it's,
I already moved it, I think.
All right. Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have to go with the,
Roll call. No,
Maggie.
we don't have anybody participating remotely, so we can dispense with that. All of that.
Okay, I never understood it in the first place.
That roll call vote is required in executive sessions and when there's remote participation, so that there's a better record.
And there's no remote participation, so, okay.
Okay. Appointment to the Regional Pipeline Advisory Committee.
Yes, the COG has requested that we appoint 1 or 2 members to the Regional Pipeline Advisory Committee. One individual has been nominated as the co-chair of the Conservation Commission. Very broad speech. So to see if there was interest for Alan Berman, also, so we're not interested. So we would have 1 representative
said publicly that I won't, vote for appointees, at your suggestion who come before us, and I think it's good policy, but I'm not gonna raise it because, we've only got the two of us today, and I think these are very good, appointments from what I've heard.
He-
We need an engineer on that committee, would be very helpful.
He is a licensed engineer and a member of our conservation committee.
So is that a
That's a motion to appoint Bobrowski.
second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, chapter 90 highway grant, propose to proceed with acquisition of front-end loader with grant funding procured from
Yeah, I'd just like to ask for final approval. We've got the approval from the Mass DOT to use the Chapter 90. We've got the quote from the equipment company. And we just needed a final approval from you to go ahead.
Okay.
The current machine's got 9,300 hours, which, depending on how you want to convert, 30 miles per hour, 50 miles per hour, is between 300 and 500,000 miles. And it's 18 years old.
Yeah.
My position is, the machine still has some value, which is indicated by the $35,000 trade-in that they're willing to give.
Yeah.
It does have some issues that are gonna come up and cost the town some money. I think it'd be better off to just trade it while it still has a significant value, rather than put money into it, which would come out of our budget. The Chapter 90 money is not gonna come out of the town budget.
Sounds good to me.
I'll move to approve that, to come out of chapter 90. I think that's all we need.
Yeah, I would note that after this expenditure of about $125,000 of chapter 90 money, we'll still have
28,315,
328,000 left to go to our roads.
right?
Which I hope will be put on, to the last penny, put on town projects, and don't we need to do something about the culverts?
Which culverts?
All of them?
Well, no, there's a lot of them that have been replaced over the years. There are a lot of them that need some work.
I might look at that.
Well, what we plan to do, chapter 90 money, we can't just say, here's a piece of money, highway
Right.
department, go do your job with it. We have to do distinct projects. So I don't think they'd bite if we said, we're gonna clean all the culverts and replace those that need it. But if instead we said, we're going to work on, choose the name of a road, on drainage and regraveling, we get approval, once the select board signs off, Larry submits it to the state DOT and comes back, and then we can operate as we did, say, with the pothole grant, which allowed us, by taking guys on specific projects off the town-funded payroll and onto the grant-funded payroll, we ended up reducing our snow and ice deficit last year from about $40,000 to $11,000, giving the taxpayers relief. This is what we're looking at next year for the summer construction season, is trying to create enough discrete projects so that we can, from the taxpayer's perspective, make some cuts in the highway department budget.
Well, I don't want to indicate that we shouldn't put it on snow and ice, I agree with that.
No, we can't do that with chapter 90, but if, in that year, we had appropriated money to wages, and when we didn't use it from tax-derived funding for wages, but paid those same wages from a grant, it meant there was money left in the coffers, which was then reallocated, rather than go after the tax rate to pay the snow and ice, we were able to allocate the money and reduce the snow and ice.
Okay, any further discussion?
I don't think so.
All in favor? Aye.
to say that I'm really pleased that the highway department's taking on more and more repair work. This loader spent 2 days in the bay. We had to borrow a jack from someplace because we don't own anything big enough to pick it up. But this latest repair would have been the kind of thing that the machine would have gotten trucked to a heavy equipment dealer, and we would have been a few $1,000s into it. Instead, we had 2 guys working on it for 2 days, and the parts cost
$15, maybe
$20,
yeah.
but the later, component.
Right.
So I think we're headed in the right direction. There is an opportunity cost, but they're not, the 2 days weren't spent.
Doing projects out on the road. But, right,
We're saving money.
Yeah,
yeah, oh, absolutely.
and I'd just like the opportunity to say you and you guys have been doing a great job keeping me busy.
Thank you.
Hope you get some sleep soon.
Yeah,
Hey, we had a whole day off yesterday.
okay, broadband and fiber to the home. Northwest delegate report.
Here comes our delegate now. Scott, why don't you come forward to this, broadband committee guy, and Tom? So John, come up here and tell us where we are with, Wired West. You and Tom have been attending Saturday meetings in far-flung places in Western Mass.
Very far flung.
Feel free to offer more over the site.
I'll answer the question. Or if you want me to launch it.
Why don't you launch it? I'm prepared to
Okay.
gather my thoughts.
Really not a whole lot of change, other than, the really ramping up for getting delegates like us to go out and talk to people, to disperse information about what's going on, but we're still kind of waiting for the information. I've been trying to set up a wiki for the delegates so that we have some kind of access to, sort of fixed access information, and now I'm working on trying to get it from, the executive committee. But, let's see, really the only facts, I think, are, I believe we're now at 32 towns. Could be one or the other. Did notice that TV has kind of been moved back a bit on the list of services. They're still working on finding a provider for it, but it's on the last piece that they sent out, I believe it was said that was not part of the quoted prices. So they're not trying to quote a price for the triple play at this point. It's essentially focusing on phone and internet.
The big emphasis is on preparing for annual town meetings in the spring, because residents of the towns are going to be asked to stand behind the project, and there seems to be a lot of preparation for that. They've put together quite a bit of a campaign for towns to present this. The strategy that they came up with was to have select boards write to towns, residents in towns, explaining what was going on with the project, what's coming up. And the broadband committee decided that we thought it would be better if the broadband committee wrote that letter. And we have a draft of it, I think it's in the packet. We also, Scott drafted a letter from the select board about Wired West and broadband fiber to the home, to go out shortly after the letter from the broadband committee. And the primary focus of that letter is to explain that Warwick Broadband, our wireless service, which now serves over 50% of the homes in Warwick, would go away when fiber is all hooked up. And there's a need for two different.
Will the cost of fiber be substantially more than the cost of broadband to users, like
What's
monthly?
What's been proposed in the model is essentially the same pricing, up to 25 times more capacity for the same money. That's on the data side. And I'm sure happy to hear that the TV is sort of getting further and further in the backseat, maybe in the way back, because it's, what I see, it's fundamentally changing. And if this thing could be built to succeed as good at internet data than any other money that it made from phones and from TV, even if it's low margin, it only make these days better. But personally, I look to see the data carry the weight.
Because people are doing streaming via data and not, are going away from, getting direct TV service.
And even direct TV service is changing. The whole thing is just morphing at this point because, I mean, HBO, any number of them are now streaming stuff as opposed to just selling to cable providers. So it's a very uneasy scene.
Yeah, and they're using the data line to enhance say the satellite product. If you buy a new satellite receiver on anywhere near the high end, it's got either Wi-Fi or an Ethernet port or both. And I don't have it, but you can tune into a show now and say, oh, I missed the beginning of it, and use that set-top box to go fetch the show via the internet from the start by virtue of, and what could be a better business plan? They're charging you for the content and it's being delivered over another pipeline that you're paying for, called your internet connection.
And we know this for a fact because we put in WiMAX down at the customers and they couldn't figure out why they didn't have internet. And it turned out when Terry went down there that the cable people had come through and hooked up our connection to their cable box. So, cable continues to be sleazy.
One of the main points, procedures, that we're going about this whole Wired West project is to get individual residents to commit a good faith deposit of a first month's, that will be applicable to a first month's fiber bill. And that's a $49 deposit, which would go in escrow. If for some reason the whole Wired West thing went up in smoke, people would get their money back. But we debated this on the broadband committee, whether that made sense for Warwick, since we have over 50% of the towns already participating on Warwick Broadband. We have money in the account. We could actually pay that. But it seemed important for the bond people that are going to be issuing the bonds, that they see that these towns are willing to put the money up, that they're committed to following through on this. So that's why we, decided to go with the whole plan that Wired West is putting out there. And, this is a cooperative effort. 33 or 32 towns working together. So the stronger we are together with the other towns, and as a whole thing, the better it's going to look that, the bonds will be issue. There were people that will come up with the money. I didn't realize that was an issue, that I just thought, oh, you can get bonds wherever, but it is an issue. And it's an unusual project in a lot of ways, so.
What risks does the town run if this goes up in smoke? Are we committed to pay off the bond, or
We are still working through the information to determine that, and we are trying to determine that before we talk to people.
I think the answer to that is huge at this point, and that's part of why I think it makes sense that the select board pay attention to governance and fiscal responsibility, and the broadband committee continue to become a marketing effort and an advisory, and become the champions of this very exciting project. But it does have risks. It has risks from the standpoint of the build itself, although those don't concern me as much because the MBI already did it once. Did it with 12 or 13,000 drops instead of 30-something thousand drops. But it did a very similar project and came in on budget with a mixture of funding. So I think we can build I think we can get to the right number and not end up, oh, whoops, we need, so much more money we need to figure on. The concern becomes the operations and paying it off. So paying it off becomes part of the operating expense. And there's real concern. And there's a lot of information that we need. And then you've got to stink test the information. So one of the things the project, because Wired West wants this letter asking for $49 from every household to come from the select board, and we think that this letter, in this case, ought to come from the broadband committee. We'd like the Warwick Selectboard to say, broadband committee should send this letter. And then the strategy is then to follow it with a letter from the select board, filling in a few blanks, filling in some questions that people are naturally going to have. And I can't tell you how many have asked me, well, what's going to happen to Warwick Broadband if this happens? And of course, someone may give me an answer. And these sorts of, whether it's electricity to your house, or telephone, or cable, if we can get it through this fiber to the home, a monopolistic, regulated, run for public interest monopoly makes more sense. When there's a question whether one provider can do it and not lose money and have their hand in the town's coffers because the town guarantees the borrowing, then it doesn't make sense to me that if this thing can come to pass, that Warwick Broadband continues to run and compete with it.
But another question is, given the uprising over the tax rate increase, what would this do to the tax rate?
The way that the model is structured, the economic model, is that until it becomes operational, there's very low interest, like 0.5% construction borrowing that goes on. Once things become operational, then you've got long-term bonds where you've got like 4% interest. But then you also have more revenue coming in, because you should have more residents signed up for it. Because one of the big things about this is that this has the capability of hooking up almost every house, if not every house, that wants to be on it. We can't do that with Warwick Broadband right now. And that's a real big plus. The other big thing that this does is it gives you much faster speeds that enable people to do stuff that they're not able to do. And you hear people have been on the Warwick listserv this week, my speeds aren't very fast, and this is night and day when you compare. 25 times as fast, I think is what I can hear.
But to get to John's question, I got my first bank loan when I was 15 years old. But my dad had co-signed it. thinking back, I was impressed by the banker for even spending any time with me, but it was really a loan to my dad. And Wired West is like the 15-year-old kid that I was. Had a great business plan and financially worked. But the lender wasn't about to loan the 15-year-old kid. Security National Bank in Michigan wasn't going to loan to me. And that's the position that Wired West would be in. It's a nonprofit or quasi-public association or something of municipal light companies without a track history. It is the full faith and credit of the town backing this up that is going to make bonding possible. In general, we're not bondable. The town of Warwick isn't bondable. But we're going to get the state involved in also guaranteeing the bond, but the state's going to be like, my dad, you're paying this back.
You know, this is the first time I've seen a figure, and I've been asking for a figure for, it seems like the last century, probably a little less. A figure as to how much faster this would be, and finally we get a figure of 25. Well, things go up by a factor of 2 every 2 years.
25 is not
In
the
this
most
business.
you're gonna get. 25 times is sort of the plans that they're offering are multiple levels of speed. The 25 megabit per second, which is 25
That's
times.
$49.
That's a $49 amount. You're gonna be able to pay some amount more than that to get, you know, another 10 times that, I think, or maybe more. I'm not sure what in other words, the 25 times more broadband is not the limit of the system. It's not even the limit of what we're going to allow on day one. It's what everybody's going to see, because the lowest price tier of this new system is 25 times faster than what Warwick Broadband is currently promising people.
Well, all I'm saying is that's not a selling point, it's a negative point. Because we should be looking at something that is capable, if we're buying onto it for 20 years, we should be looking at something that is capable of operating 1,000 times as fast, not 25 times.
Well, this
In fact,
is.
it is.
This in fact is, and in fact,
It's
the
the
middle-
fiber that
the
makes the
middle
difference.
mile could, if you live along the path of the already constructed middle mile, Warwick Broadband could sell you gigabit Ethernet, a gigabit, 10 times what the whole Warwick Broadband system currently buys. We could sell that to you. Our cost would be $4,300 a month. You probably can't afford that. I know I can't. Warwick Broadband can't. The Wired West is a whole different model, and it isn't going to be charging that kind of money. But to get a gigabit of Ethernet to one person along the existing fiber that goes to the 2 towers in the town hall and such would cost minimum $600 for the internet itself for gigabit in Boston, $2,500 to transport it to Springfield, $1,250 to transport it to Warwick across the fiber. You have to pay at least $10,000 to make a lateral off the existing fiber that goes down Route 78 to your house. You have to pay $1,000 for the box, and people can't step up for that on that way. This is another way to do it for a
Well,
lot cheaper.
let me just say, Nick, that while I know exactly what you're saying, there's nothing out there right now that's gonna give you a 20-year guarantee. So it's not available. I
Then
mean,
we should-
fiber is.
Then we
well,
should purchase bonds
no,
for
but-
20 years.
With
But
20
here's
End
the
of
thing.
story.
Here's the
What you're
thing.
talking about is a pipe.
But let me finish.
Go ahead.
If Warwick and the towns in Western Mass don't have access to the internet, they may not be here in 20 years. I mean, there is, you know, it's very hard to do business or anything without it anymore. And to say, okay, well, we're just not going to have internet because we can't guarantee that this is a good investment is really probably not good for the town.
We have internet.
We do, but we have a lot of people who are unhappy with it right now. I can guarantee you that. Because they're all calling me, or David.
That's true, but then we put up $6,000 per household Are they that unhappy, $6,000 per household unhappy?
That's why we asked them.
Yeah, but
Well-
you may in fact be right. By the
You're
time we vote
asking,
on this.
you're asking them to say yes.
No, I'm asking them to consider it and tell us what they think.
We're asking them for $49 worth of yes right now, which is a bit
That's
different
true,
than
but I think
6,000.
that's not, as you said, that's not really for the town to say, it's for you guys to say. And this letter from the town is too much, to my mind, an endorsement of what the committee is saying, and we should not be in business of endorsing it.
That's why it's from the Broadband Committee, not from the Select Board.
Yes, but I'm saying to our fellow Warwick residents from the board, to be sure it's a draft, but it is too much simply an endorsement.
Well, that's the Select Board's letter, so that's what it is the first draft. You wanna take the point on writing that letter? You're talking the Select Board letter, not the.
Right, I'm talking the select board letter. If there's a motion to approve the select board letter, my vote is no.
Well,
It's not here for that purpose.
and another thing to factor in, and this is my own opinion and no one else's, but there are rumblings that the way this is gonna break out, as far as the 40 million distribution, is that the Wired West towns will be entitled to more than 50% of it, and then the rest of the towns and then the Wired West towns will cut up the rest of it. So playing along with Wired West, I think may be to the town's benefit. I mean, if we look as if we're, interested in this, I think MBI is going to have a different point of view when it comes time, if it comes time, to say, okay, well, this isn't gonna work, but how is that 40 million gonna get divided up?
So I think what you're saying is, if you compare, rejecting it now and saying we're not gonna bother with this versus doing what we can to bring this up at town meeting, and even if the town ultimately votes not to authorize the spending, and therefore we're not going to be participating with Warwick at that point because we turned down, we did not get 2/3 majority, that puts us in a better position to get more of that money than if we say now and forget it, we're not even gonna bother.
That's my theory.
Until the town votes, the town meeting with 2/3 majority that we want to authorize this, we haven't committed anything.
I want to address the point you brought up earlier about planning for 1,000 times more faster. The fiber cable itself can do that. We're not set up to offer service.
However, we are set up, the 25 times is not the most the system is going to be supported on day one. 25 times for broadband is the cheapest option that we're going to sell people, that Wireless will sell people. On day one, it will support higher speeds. I don't know if Wireless is committed to a top tier, what that's going to look like, but it's going to be higher than the 25
Right.
megabits.
But the
I think the
technology.
point is that as
Right.
time changes and technology changes and the price of things changes, we can go faster. The wire is capable of handling it. That's what the primary thing we're paying for.
Fiber is, as they improve, the electronics, fiber keeps
Just
getting
an
faster.
example, Verizon, when they sold this, when I lived in Groton, when I signed up for the service on day one, it was 20 megabits what they offered as their only speed. I think today the same service is 50 or 100. I'm not sure what the exact numbers are now, but without touching the fiber to the house, they're now 2 to 5 times that speed a few years later in terms of what they're offering customers. So
I'm
we're
sure
not
that
limiting
fiber
anyone
can
to.
operate at a very high speed if you get very high quality fiber.
And they're
If
putting
you
in,
don't, it won't.
they are
Yeah,
putting in
so-
high
so-
quality.
So that's
We need a commitment before, I need a commitment before I will sign on to anything, that what we're buying into is good enough to take the 20-year perspective. And not that, it can in theory be very fast.
Well, and you can probably,
That's not anything.
well, but they are putting in single mode, and as I understand it, single mode kind of trumps multi-mode because of throughput considerations.
So,
They're also running all of the fiber so that they can do straight runs from the switching station. So that means that they are wired west, when I say they, are setting it up so that it is forward compatible. I mean,
Yeah.
as things improve, they are able to pass that without having to rewire
Well,
anything.
do we have to put up another 2 million to get that improvement?
No, it's in the
Well,
plan.
That's the way-
what's the top level speed they're planning on offering on day one? I mean, I think part of the answer to your question is already there, I think. I just don't have firm numbers. You know, when this goes operational, what is the highest level of service, what's the speed that they actually intend to offer on, without talking about future even? If it's there, then,
They are offering 1 gig for $109.
Thousand.
Warwick Broadband could give you 1 gig for 5,000 a month right now,
So,
if you live on Route 7.
if, those are the numbers that they are now.
And we would make any money.
I really don't think it's a theoretical issue, Nick. This is what the wire can handle. The only question becomes
Actually,
pricing.
I think
The
the
wire can
last
handle
line
much
can
more.
handle 10 gigs
yeah,
anyway.
this is what they're planning on handling as an ISP, so that you can, if you wanna pay $109 a month, get that when this goes live, immediately, to get that speed, which is then, I guess another 25 times what
Well, there has to be a number they're guaranteeing without any more money being put out.
Well, they're guaranteeing all those numbers at the price that they're offering the service at. 49 is the base, and then it
Yeah.
goes up from there. If you want a gigabyte, you can have it for 109, but they're guaranteeing you at $109 a month, you're getting a gigabyte.
100 gigabyte what, per second?
Yes.
A gigabyte
What?
per second.
Per second.
Well, I think, Nick, I think it's also relevant.
So it's 40
I
times.
think it's 100 a bit,
Well,
actually.
yeah,
Geez,
so it's 40 times,
Yeah,
so this is 25 times, this is 40 times that, so it's, yeah, it's 1,000 times what we're offering now.
I was gonna say, Nick, I think it's also relevant to look along with the speed, to look at what, the fiber to the home itself and that initiative. I think bringing that connection to the homes is, in my opinion, as important as the speed that the fiber's gonna bring. I don't think that there's ever a question in my mind that they can deliver the data speeds over fiber connections. I think the question is, being in a rural area and finding enough funds and backing to put a fiber connection to a home, to all the homes or nearly all the homes in town, and then have a company that's willing to support and administer a data plan to it. If you look at that and transpose it against what Warwick Broadband's done a fantastic job, and it's allowed me and a lot of other folks in town to have a very cost-effective solution to getting on the internet. I work in IT and have for 20 years, so when I'm home, the internet connection is my lifeline, short of me driving to Vermont for work. So it's critical, but what also is critical is speed, response time, uptime, and that's been one of my biggest disadvantages with the Warwick Broadband, is, if my connection goes out for any period of time, if anyone else in my home needs to use the connection simultaneous with me, often I have to pack my bags and drive to Vermont to work, because it's just not enough to carry the load that we need. Doing it for a few years and seeing some cost savings from some satellite connection has been helpful, but I'm definitely nearing the point where I'm probably gonna get, if we don't have an option like this in the future, I'll have to get Warwick Broadband and with satellite service simultaneously at my home to support my career. So I think, as much as we're talking about 25 or 50 meg or a gigabit or whatever that speed connection is, I just don't wanna look past the real unique opportunity of having a fiber connection to so many residential households and having a company with a track record that'll deliver that service.
will you personally pay $6,000 for that?
I might
Do you think there's 100 people in the town who will personally pay $6,000 for it?
I think that, you know, there's actually been a surprising number of people that have been talking to me about the, you know, the increase in value in their properties. Even my own mom, for example, who's, you know, long retired and living in town, is really starting to look at it like,
And has a better connection than you.
you know, much better connection than I. But she's even starting to say the potential return on her value of her property, being able to sell her property sometime in the next 5 or 10 years with a fiber connection to it, could amount to well over $6,000, you know, as a potential return to her. So I'm not mitigating that risk, and I'm not mitigating that return, but I am saying that it's a much bigger picture than, you know, a 25 meg versus a 50 meg connection.
Yes.
Getting away from all the, how fast everything is, isn't this always gonna be subsidized by the town and the town taxpayers versus an independent company? So you're gonna be paying for it, right now the broadband is independent. Okay, so the town put up the money, got the money back, now it's independent, should start paying back the town.
There isn't anything to pay back.
Huh?
There isn't anything to pay back.
Well, I
If we
mean,
started running stupid and losing money, it would end up on tax.
no, I'm saying, as it gets better, it should be able to pay some money back, is what I'm saying. And not saying paying it back, it's been paid back, but there would be excess money.
Yeah,
So
well,
what I'm saying,
we've been paying, we started out with $40,000
Yeah.
borrowing, we paid it back, and at this point, we've got over 200,000 invested in it, and it didn't cost the taxpayers anything, because it was the people writing the check for their monthly fee. We took that money and invested,
but
paid as
now
we
it's
went.
working at a profit. This will never work at a profit. You're gonna be paying fees, plus you're gonna ask people to pay increase in taxes for it.
I don't
It's
think
not gonna
that
increase your
necessarily
value.
follows, but it could be true.
If
But
you're
it
borrowing this money, of course you are.
It could be true, but it's not necessarily true. And
How can it not be
it
true?
could, because if it operates according to a model, and it turns out to be real, and turns a profit, it'll never cost the town anything.
The thing is that aspect, one thing, one thing that was not mentioned in this meeting, because I mentioned it last time, was the plan, once we have subscribers to this, or once Wired West has subscribers, and once Wired West is getting money in, the business model calls for that money to be then redistributed back to the towns that borrowed it. So over time, the operation of the Wired West and the fiber service will be taking that money that subscribers are giving them to pay back to the towns to help pay out that debt amount.
But the problem with that is, this town doesn't have enough people in it to get enough back.
Yeah,
The
that,
bigger
that's
towns
not
would
true.
get that. You only get, what, 300?
It's a
Families?
percentage, no, it's a percentage of your population that, and, I mean, that's what they're going for at this point, but the thing is, once the system is in, there is, as long as it's well run, it's just as likely to make a profit as any other business.
Well, there is Steve's right, there is the underlying problem of, this is a bad business case for any kind of wireline versus wireless, because the opportunity cost of going past, if somebody's saying, I don't want it, and the next guy's saying, I don't want it, and the next one's saying, I do, when it's wireless on a tower, no big deal. But if you just double the distance between subscribers, the cost of each live installation is up as a result of that.
I just can't see it's such a great expense when, I don't know if you're having a problem with your internet, but I have HughesNet, and my son has a company in Kansas, my daughter is a human resource manager in Plimpton. I just do files and stuff like that. We download, upload, we have video conferencing, all on HughesNet. I don't ask the town for a dime. I just pay my bill. I can download the newspaper in about 8 seconds or less. I don't understand what all these huge expenses, just have something a little faster. Even your mind can only work so fast. You can only physically do anything so fast. It just seems like an enormous expense for something, if you got it in the center of town here, if Verizon or somebody else feels that it's worthwhile, they would bring it to your house if they got a chance of making money on it.
Well, I'm pretty sure you will find that property values don't go up a lot because you have HomeSnet.
Property value is not gonna go up because the taxes are so high. We're in the top, out of 350 towns, we're in the top 15% for taxes. You think why the internet is gonna change that? That's,
Well,
if
We're
30% of the
currently
population is
adding something
retired,
like
40% is over
$500
60,
per year.
with no new people coming in. That's where you have to get the people in, bring the taxes down, then the internet, they'll be all for it. They're the ones that's the future.
I
But I'm
don't
not sure you
think
bring-
we're going to resolve this tonight, but I
No.
would advise the committee to prepare a wonderful presentation for the annual meeting that's very clear and lists all the conceivable questions that people will have. And,
There's got to be a lot of discussions like this among
I think more than one.
2 people, 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, in people's kitchens and living rooms. And I have concern whether there's gonna have been enough information and enough of that by May. And that's something to consider in the back of your mind, because if this is a highly feasible project, I would hate to see it lose because it gets ramrodded and gets a response. If it takes some extra time, get information out there, and
it might be well for you to hold some information meetings
That's our plan.
and,
And we discussed that, I think, much like some of these conversations, we don't have all of the direct information to answer all the questions. And to make an informed decision, we wanna get all that information out to folks, so, we talked about trying to set up 1 or 2 sessions in town and bringing, some members of the organization that's doing this on behalf of all the towns in to answer some of these questions, because they've answered these questions dozens and dozens and dozens of times over. You can do it much better than we can, they're much more qualified, so, along the lines of putting together some of those meetings, like David alluded to as well, we talked about maybe coming up with some, individual meetings that people can even have, in their houses, get 6 or 8 people together and talk this stuff out. Try to create a central place where we can have a list of questions that we can't adequately answer, but are important to answer. And we don't know, the tide could shift one way or the other, but I think to make the most informed decision that we can, we ask those questions and we get those questions answered. I think that's the best way to get
If it's also wonderful, why should the town put up a penny? Why should the town put up a penny if it's all going to benefit everybody so much?
Because we
You're
don't
gonna wanna
live in
pay for
Europe,
it.
where it's subsidized, the money has to come from somewhere.
why do we
I'm
subsidize
saying it
schools,
can come
highways,
from
and other
the
things we do
people
as a society?
Who are going to benefit so much.
But on a small
Public
scale,
good.
why subsidize Warwick broadband?
I'm sorry?
Public good is one of
And
those
if-
things that governments sort of get asked to subsidize.
It's not public good, it's the good of the people who decide to subscribe.
Well, the roads are only good for the people who decide to drive.
Which is a majority.
Right, electricity is only good for those who.
Turn on a light bulb.
You know,
It's the same with everything.
You don't get free light.
You can.
Well, you don't get free internet.
They don't work real well.
You don't get free internet. And that's what Wired West is asking for, free internet, because it'll be paid for by the public, not paid for by the people who get it. And that's my bottom line here. It's,
I'll have to muddle through that one.
All, with all respect, all Nick's arguments were applicable to Warwick broadband, and it didn't turn out that way. And that's the promise of the wired west fiber, is that it can obtain a business plan like Warwick broadband. Yes, the town was at risk, but the town never actually had to cover my 15-year-old loan that I get co-signed for, but there is that risk.
we were at risk for $40,000, and I, over a number of objections, moved to have the approval specifically on the basis of good faith effort being made to return the $40,000 to the town, which it did. But 2 million, there's a difference there.
Well, there's a lot more people that will be served by Wired West. They
Not
can't
in
get
this
it now.
town, not in this town.
Sure.
If you double it, you
Well,
certainly
at
have
the
doubled from
$40,000
$40,000
period.
to 2 million.
I mean, you.
How many customers were you covering right after you started? I mean,
There were people highly involved in Warwick Broadband who thought we hit all we could when we were at 40, and then said the same thing when we hit 60, and when we hit 80, and now we're at 160, 170. I'm modeling for next year for another 10, and I'll probably have undershot. You know?
Your limit is only 300, and if that was giving back, 300 people giving back 40,000 is a lot different from 300 people giving back 2 million. It is.
So the first thing to do is, we gotta see the model, and we gotta see if it stinks or not.
So let's make sure we have enough information that the 2 million is going to come back to the public before we do this thing, and we don't have any kind of information like that.
well, we will. I'm
Get it
working really
to us
hard
and
on
get
it.
it to us by May.
Well, hopefully we will.
And that was, again, at the meetings I was in December, they talked briefly about that, but it was still kind of at the hand-wavy stage of, based on a certain number of subscribers, they would show some charts showing how the money would come back. But you're right, they need to give us better information to be able to say, how risky is this?
And they're well aware of that, and they're working on that at this moment furiously, but it is behind, in the process.
Okay.
We're coming up on 6 o'clock. Is there a consensus that the select board would prefer to defer and not send the letter that Wired West wants and let the broadband committee do that? Consensus on that?
Yeah.
All right, and then the final item on the broadband and fiber issue is the draft FY16, draft budget. Make sure Rosa gets one. Last year's budget was 102,000 in balance. This year's budget is 98,000 in balance. And it's probably a little conservative on the income side, but I don't see the need to have the expending authority pass this. Quite frankly, there's fluff in here. Making the balance so that it doesn't show surplus. Contingency, consulting, contingencies for something happening with planning, or we buy insurance. And there's an insurance line in here. Consulting, doesn't much happen. There's $10,000 in here to add some more repeater sites so we can serve places that we don't cover. It's a reasonable budget. It models for 20 more customers than we currently now have. It seems reasonable in my experience. We've got it all day long though. So this budget would, by law, needs to be considered by the selectmen at this time in advance, and then it's ultimately acted on by town meeting. Because even though Warwick Broadband does not get any tax subsidy, it can't spend the fee income it has without a vote of town meeting to appropriate it.
Okay, so we need to approve the draft budget.
Either that or take it under advisement, take it up at the next meeting.
That's great to me.
Okay, I guess we'll take it up.
Okay.
to the next meeting.
That's fine with me.
Okay, so you join the select board, right?
Actually, it continues to be a select board meeting, it's just the finance committee ones.
Right, we have our quorum, so call the Finance Committee meeting to order.
Before you start your, I must just add that we remember with sadness the passing of Captain
Sorry. I was very glad to meet her when I did. She was a charming woman. And you've been a real trooper coming here today under this. Do we need to, is this a joint meeting?
Right, it's a joint meeting.
If it's a joint meeting, then we should probably end our prior meeting and reconvene.
I don't think so. For us, it's all one meeting, it just brought another board. When the finance director, when the broadband committee was here, we've been having quite an exercise in understanding open meeting law and not doing email serial deliberations and okay to talk about what's going to be on the agenda and when to meet and share facts but not opinions and argue points. So they weren't deliberating as best they could. You guys are legally posted meeting, you can actually deliberate, and so they joined, they merged, and they'll have their own minutes for their aspect of the meeting, or they can act on ours.
Well, we as the Finance Committee wanted to get together with you folks at the beginning of the budget season. We thought that last year's, let's call it a surprise with the extra monies needed for the IT at the school was going to be enough to make us plan forward even more for unbudgeted items. But then you add in, I heard the last end of the I guess it's the Wired West, trying to get the last mile, the monies that might be involved there, and also what's going on with the snow and ice. It makes it even more important for us to get from the departments a projected budget of those things that they see on the horizon that is not in the budget, but they want us to know about, to try to smooth over time. I just throw together an idea with just numbers in it. They don't mean anything because I haven't received any real numbers, but my vision would be that the departments and everyone that has projected but unbudgeted costs in the future, they would tell us about them before going into the budget crunch. So if we see some years in the out years, 10 years out, let's say, or 5 years, whatever is determined, we see any that we need to smooth over the hump, we do that with our capital stabilization. We would plan accordingly and not go into things blindly like we have been lately. Got a whole, David needs one of these. He's got a version beforehand. And got a whole bunch more. Anybody else wants to look at it? Pass around. And I envision this might be many, many pages long. As you see, it goes down through the big things that we know about. We could have big facility costs. We're always going to have vehicle replacement costs, vehicle maintenance costs. Is it smarter to replace an engine or buy a new vehicle? Well, we need to plan for that. We shouldn't be blindsided that 4 years from now that we're going to need 3 vehicles to be replaced. Well, let's do one next year, or 1 2 years later. Just look at it smartly. And then anything and everything else, you can see the cats and dogs at the back. Could be anything from the assessors need new IT equipment. Anything that's going to cost above and beyond, come on down. Above and beyond what is budgeted, it'd be nice to know about it. And the last bit of my idea would be that this would also be put into the annual report So the new one we're gonna make would be in next year's annual report, and we can refer to it to say, hey, how come we didn't know about this from the fire department? Well, this broke down and that's what we needed, okay. But if it's something that we know about, we wanna get even better at projecting, better at budgeting, better at thinking forward. And if we're not looking forward, years like this will creep up on us with the snow, who knows what it's gonna do next. So, I'll shut up about what I was saying and see if there's any questions that relate to this. This is just totally an idea that we threw around. And the numbers mean absolutely nothing. It's just a spreadsheet that adds things up for a projection. I bring it to the select board because they're the ones that have to hand this to the departments, make sure they reply through you, and then get it to us before the budget crunch, so we can get it into the budget and the warrants and whatever else.
Rick, are these budgets, unbudgeted items for this year on the first
This
page?
is just, I'm trying to make it look on this that it's, these numbers mean absolutely nothing, it's things I made up, but it's the, would include that, you know, the CBRS costs. If they know about IT or building projects, they should tell us about them so we could put our share into the budget to say, we got to budget $20,000 in a few years for something they're doing, our share. If they don't have anything, that's good, but we just can't go blindly into it and continue to go and go, ooh, what's coming up on the warrant that we have to budget for, and where's our stabilization fund?
Does anybody know where we are with the ice and snow budget for this year?
Yeah, we're that far away from being, as of this warrant here, of being $20,000 over budget, $19,800 and something. And I figure that at that point, we are still looking at about 8 to 10 weeks worth of winter weather events, potentially. So the seat of my pants says we probably have a $70,000 snow and ice deficit this year. And that'll be offset a little bit by some of the grant spending that's supplanted a bit of taxpayer supported wage spending and such, so we'll mitigate it a little bit. But I don't think to the extent we were able to in this current budget year, where we took a $40,000 budget through unexpended other highway lines, took it down to 11,000. I don't think we're gonna hit that kind of percentage. So my estimate, this winter's gonna add $1 to next year's tax rate. So that means $7,000 is $1.
Are we looking at any capital projects out of the tech school this year?
Yes.
Any idea what the projection is yet?
Cost to Warwick of about $2,000 a year for the next 20.
Is there anything else that we know of?
At the tech school,
No, at anything. It'll be coming out of the winter. School, police department, fire department, highway department.
I don't anticipate anything at the highway department. The tech school technology, they were able to accomplish last year's plan and had money left over. The result is that this year's plan is going to be funded by the funds that were unexpended from the borrowing, and the remainder rolled into the assessment. It's the hope of the administration and the school committee that future IT just becomes not a capital expenditure to the towns, but an ongoing budgeted expense within the operating budget. So we'll be looking at amortizing the $400,000 over 4 years. The interest rate is negligible, it's like 0.53%. So $400,000 borrowing is 2,000 and something interest a year. Warwick's share of amortizing that borrowing is 10% of the project, so we'll have $10,200 for the next 4 years. Pay that off, and we can, provided the school committee holds the line, we can anticipate that technology spending will become part of the operating budget and not a capital item. Police chief's here, he could speak to police capital items.
I'm sorry, what was the?
Right.
I just wonder if you got any capital expenditures coming up this year, I just kind of wonder if any town departments did, we talked a little bit about the tech school and so forth, but we've covered all that last year.
I can't speak officially for the chief, but we have Engine 5 that, for a special town meeting, we were looking at $12,700 to get it ready for use. And then the engine in that went. I still think that there's probably going to be something coming forth from the fire department to get that truck ready at least. And I don't know what else the chief's thinking.
So we can expect another tax increase this year just from the SSL.
We got an additional 100 and something thousand this year in Chapter 90 highway money. I'm working with the highway superintendent to find ways to use it to get approved for projects that'll take some of the hurt off of what the highway department is regularly looking for from the taxpayers. Kind of feels like going back to when I was a select board member in the 1980s when, and finance committee member before that when Prop 2.5 first hit and school expenses will continue to rise, and we balance the town's budget on the highway department and just keep whittling it away. It's not a long-term plan. And it'd be nice if we were in a position to say that additional $115,000 is that much more money that we're going to invest in the towns, because like broadband, we rely on our roads really heavily, and we like good roads. The other piece, we've got capital projects happening in building improvements, but the grant funding, we got $135,000, $6,000, $7,000 of Green Communities money, and we're working on getting state approval for projects that will, over time, lower our energy use, which, if our energy costs don't go up too much, could also lower our expenses. This year, we seem to be running more heating costs than last. Bad news is, besides that, we locked in a price of $3.60-something for oil, which looked pretty good this time last year. We did. On most of the town buildings, we used that contracted oil, and we're now paying $2 in short money. So the hit is not as bad. Electrical costs are way up, and we've got, I'm talking about operating, I'll shut up. But we do have, the police station is heated with baseboard electric. That's really costly, and we submitted as part of our Green Communities application a plan to air seal and insulate the building and replace it with air source heat pumps. So I'm working on that filing right now. We're going to do even more work on the town hall and the library to tighten them up, lower energy costs. We've already deployed LED lighting outdoors in some of the buildings. We're looking at street lighting. So those are capital related, but I don't expect to be putting any money articles for the town. It's just going to be using this first first year, 130-something thousand of Green Communities money to accomplish these things.
Would it be possible to take some of the highway department operating budget and use it for the ice and snow removal, rather than give everybody $1,000 tax increase, and use some of that extra chapter 90 money to supplement it?
The Chapter 90 money has got to be dealt with projects, so you can't say, and they wouldn't take a project that says we're going to clean all our culverts and replace the ones that need it. It's going to have to say we're going to do this road, we're going to work on drainage and graveling, and we're going to do this and that. And that is the plan, but it's not going to help us out for this year we're standing in very much. I mean, we'll have a little bit of time in this fiscal year to do this, and I pledge to work on making that happen. Larry's not resistant of it.
Whereabouts are we with that budget, the highway budget, the amount of money that's spent already?
Pretty much on target.
What's the target?
At this point in the year, we're 63% into the year, or whatever it is, and that's about where it's spent. So there hasn't been much operating money left on the table compared to last year. Although there was some, the $30,000 pothole grant was mostly expended this year, so that's going to help a little bit. We'll do what we can. Some of the things that we do to try to take the curse off are just shell games, like, damn, salt's so expensive, let's just not buy that 3 loads we need to fill the building or fill up the oil tank. Well, it's still gonna hit that expense and just shift it from one year to another.
Any discussion on the, I don't know, from the select board on the projecting of the costs? In theory, or on any, substantive changes that you want to have made? It just seems that
I think it's a good.
10-year might be too far, but some vehicles.
Well, that's kind of
It's a
the
long
line
list.
that says advice to departments. What we had in mind on that agenda item was, there have been years where we've said, folks, we need to level fund. There's just, or we need to cut, or.
We've done lots of that, for sure.
Yeah, so, looking at the agenda, the discussion of cost of living recommendation.
Right.
And then what in general, advice to departments, and then, you might want to think about getting crazy. I did it once when I was a selectman, when we instituted zero-based budgeting. Never saw such a hail of dissatisfaction. But zero-based budgeting is when you say, what we basically do is say, what was last year's budget? What was last year's budget? And, tweak it. Zero-based budget says, start from zero, justify everything. And there were some department heads who felt that it was insulting and disrespectful, and I really personally would never like to try it again. But it is a financial government administration technique to try to achieve cost cutting. Don't just assume that what we did yesterday needed to be done and has equal weight. And then you find out that some things can be incrementally cut and still be effective, and some things can, you just can't mess with, or you might as well just roll up the tent and say, we're out of this line of business.
Any discussion on that? That just seems draconian a little bit. But we're going to be in a world of hurt.
I think David does have a point, and I think we do need a little bit more justification of what we have had in some past years. I think there's some people that's gotten some very good raises, and just to say across the board that we're gonna give out raises again, I don't really think is fair. And there's some departments, maybe they're not full time, they have got nothing. And it's
not for a year or two, it's 4, 5, 6, and 8. And I think if we're going for it, I think it should be justified, not that I deserve it. I wanna see what the qualifications are, and I wanna see why they do deserve it, the extra work they're doing, that they do deserve it.
So you're suggesting merit increases?
I'm not saying I'm never increasing, I was just saying that I wanna see that they're justified for it. And when we do go to budget this year, and we do start sitting down and having our meetings, and I haven't talked to anybody on the finance committee, I would like to see what the money was spent on. I would like to see what it was spent on, get the audit reports and bring them with us, and let's pass them out this year and see what we are spending them on. Not that we approve the budget, whatever goes, goes. I mean, I didn't know we was buying a police cruiser this year, I didn't know that we was getting a new dump truck this year, I didn't know we were showing up with fire trucks this year. Everybody come to us and how much need they was in, and then they turn around and buy all this. I mean, I shouldn't have seen no tears on anybody's shoulders if they're out doing that.
Kevin,
I think a lot,
the
no,
dump
I'm
truck
not
was
picking-
bought,
Some are chapter
just
90.
I don't-
understand, the dump truck was bought with chapter 90 money, the police cruiser was bought with such short money out of the budget that the cost savings would take care of it out of the budget. What did it cost, 2,000 something? Now, you could have bought the light bar siren for what we paid for that low mileage cruiser, so select board approved it. What was the third one?
Fire department's fire trucks.
You know, that, I volunteered to go down there and help with that Detroit because of my great experience with the bus.
That
Those
thing's still
things
around,
are-
isn't it?
Yeah. And if we can figure out what's wrong with those rigs, we can save the town hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I really commend the fire department and those who do the mechanicking on those things. It's pretty impressive. So all of these things have been done at minimal cost. There is the free van, free church van problem. And that is, somebody says, hey, we'll give you a free van. Well, now you've got an insurance bill and gasoline. And pretty soon it'll replace the van. So you're right, these things need to be looked at. But short-term or narrow gauge view of it, this didn't cost the taxpayer.
Chapter 90 money, as far as I'm concerned, could have been spent on roads. These roads do need to get redone. And I think it should go through the boards of the department. I'm not picking on the fire department for going around and picking up a few trucks, but I think it should go through the departments. We did buy a police cruiser, which was cheap. We still gotta maintain that vehicle too. Usually when somebody's getting rid of something cheap, something's gotta be done to it down the road.
Or they've got such a great ticket revenue stream that it's just time.
Well, there is kind of a hard guy over that way where it comes from.
I contributed my share.
So, I believe it's possible to get out of the accountant a list by department, so we can look at things that were spent on for last year. So we could look at what's been spent, if the departments could look a little bit forward for us to tell us what's coming up. We can do all this work this year, but next year if we don't have any stabilization built up and some big things come in that somebody might know about, we could be hurt. But we can, in our meetings, pull those and look through them and say, what are they buying? I don't think they're buying anything gold plated or anything, but I don't think it can hurt.
One more capital area. I got photographs from the Building and Energy Committee of the Warwick School District.
Inside or outside?
No, outside, and I'm talking about ice dams and icicles and melting. The before and after pictures of the gymnasium roof are just astounding. We did it right. There's snow on the roof, there's no icicles.
There's no
Clear
lines of.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it was an
escape.
inflatable building
Yeah.
made out of canvas.
Yeah, there we go.
The main school, there are places where there are icicles that go from the roof to the ground. There are ice dams, like, we re-roofed it, we put ice shield on the whole thing, but we are like leaking money like nobody's business in that thing. So everybody that's told us that that building needs to be air sealed and it's insulated and the HVAC system tweaked or replaced are right. I hope that being on the school committee, I can help the district see its way to performance contracting, because these costs could be met with the savings from not burning so much oil. Go down there. There's this round window by the library to the right of the front door. There's a cascade of ice from the roof to the ground. And there's about 1 billion pounds of ice. The ice shield's gonna do its work.
But we still pay 10% of the energy costs, 100% of the repair at this point, so I know Steve's working on that.
Yeah, I just want to point out that, yeah, a lot of times icicles are a signifier of heat loss, but there's a couple of factors that are going on this year that I would say there was, I think it was January 21st, there was an ice storm, and that sits underneath all the snow. So I think some of the icicles and icing up isn't specifically due to heat loss.
However, when you got one part of the roof on the building that's got not an icicle on it, and the other ones are astounding.
Well, that total project in that day, you remember?
I think 155, but I'd have to, we had 18,000 of appropriation to town capital over 2 years built up. So I tried to use that and not the borrowing money as much as possible. So I have to check with the accountant and find out, but I think the total project came in at 155. And the budget was more than that. We also did more work as we got into it and discovered stuff.
Guess we can get back on the real agenda.
What do you think we should be doing in terms of advice to departments for cost of living increases? Right now, the few budgets that have been submitted have been with no increase, with the understanding that if there's advice to apply percentage or whatever, that they get to rework their budgets. I will tell you that in the school department, the steps alone for 1 year of increased longevity of service are either 3 or 3.5%. And on top of that, there are undetermined but significant cost of living increases, so that the increases are more like 4 or 5% on the school department.
I can't reply to the school, somebody else can.
The retirement system this year, the county retirement system is recommending 3% increases, but that's a weird situation because there's a lot of underlying reasons to do that because of formulas with retirement. And the U.S. Department of Labor this year calculates cost of living increase to be 1.4%. Be nice to have some merit pay built in. If I had, the schools step table, my pay would have gone up $10,000 in the last 7 years. Didn't. It'd be interesting to put some consideration of merit and performance into the mix.
I think your 1.4, David, is closer than your 4 and 5. Actually, the ones that are paying the bills, the taxpayers in this town, I don't think are getting that.
I hear you.
I'm not being mean to anybody, but, there's some people in this town that aren't able to pay their bills that are coming pretty damn close to it. It's kind of the way I feel about it. I think if somebody's got a problem or somebody's been in a pinch where they haven't had a raise in years, maybe I consider it. But like I said again, I think there's some people that we've outperformed and there's some that we've done nothing for. last week that I found out that, you know, most people, when they turn 45 years old, they're gonna get raises in their lifetime. Does anybody know that? I never realized that. What was that
The
again?
teachers are maxed out at 45.
Most people in their lifetime, once they turn 45, they've made their biggest earnings in life before 45 years old. From that point, they go backwards.
60% of this town is over 50.
Hey, I just turned 50, so don't pick on me.
It's great years. I enjoy those years. Make the best of it.
Is there a consensus, folks, that 1.5 is a number we should?
I don't know, Dave. I don't even wanna consider, I'd like to see what the total budget is before I commit to something. You know, if we're looking at $1 of tax increase this year, I don't know. I'm just kind of feel uncertain. I really do. You know, we've absorbed the school budget, the debt that we was paying on the schools in the last few years. We've had a tax increase. How much more do we ask the people in town to do? That's kind of my feeling. It's just, I don't know.
On the other hand, we don't pay the highest salaries, and we have some very good people working very hard. And I would like to show them very good appreciation.
What does 1.4% translate to total budget?
Well, last year. What we had last year for 1% was,
It was pretty short,
it
Mark.
was
Yeah.
$10,000 or something. I don't know off the top of my head.
You know, if we're going,
If the 1% was $10,000, is that what you're saying?
I think so. No,
If it were a small amount,
that would be
it
most
would be
of
worth it. I think it'd be
what is it? It's only their salary.
Now, is this salary or is this across the board? You know, and what I mean by that is, you know, you was the board of selectmen, I don't think we've given you a raise since. I don't know.
We're the
When you got
cheapest
it. Right.
paid board in the
It's an honor.
We're overworked and underpaid. You know, you have got a lot of responsibility, I don't think we've done anything to you. I think we did full-time employees last year, basically. I think David got it, I think the police department got it. You know, I don't think we did anything for the select board, I think we did.
We didn't do anything for
I
the
don't
elected
think we did.
officials whatsoever.
Just the
The
clerk.
select board makes the same 400 a year I made in 1987 on this board.
But I don't think you're on the select board for money.
No.
But we want 1% more next year. 1% of zero, okay, there we go. But,
Just to give you a basis of comparison, I believe the school committee, I'm on the school committee, I don't take a salary because of the ethics of it, but we get 200 a year, the salary is 200 a year, in Cambridge is 37,000. So we are pretty underpaid.
Cambridge is actually full-time, isn't it?
We're very well, I don't know, it's just the point that we're very well served here, and you guys are.
But you're not the lowest.
and I know what Kevin's talking about. If you offer something up and you have to pull it back, you seem like you're being mean and miserly. Is there a way to ask, last year the police department did their differential survey and came up and said, hey, we would like to have a raise above and beyond whatever the percentage is because we're being underpaid compared to everyone else. Then we could reserve the right later, once we see the full budget, to go, we can afford a raise or we can't.
At some point also, I think the personnel committee needs to do a survey to see where we are in comparison with the
I think the raises need to be as much as the taxpayers pay, which is null and void. I mean, Jesus.
On these surveys, I mean, what other people are getting paid, are they dealing with towns of only 800 people or less? Because you can't compare apples and oranges. If you've got 1,500 people and more services, or you have a commercial business in town, different tax rate, I mean, let's compare it to others. I compared a lot of them around here, and we're way above the rest of them. Cummington is a perfect example of how to run a small town. I mean, they pay their people well, they're all part-time, a lot of volunteer work. Everything, every item on the budget at the end of the year is showing where the check went, who it went to, how much, everything. And it's about the same size town as us. Their values are a little higher, property values, but not that much. The difference is they don't spend every dime that the state allows them to. And it works out well. So if you're gonna compare, then compare to the same thing. Not, you can't compare to orange or apple, stuff like that. It's crazy.
You know, I kind of see a point comparing, I haven't compared Cummington. You know, but to look at some of the towns in our area, you know, who do you compare it to? You know, if you wanted to compare your highway department, who would you compare it to that has the miles of roads and the miles of dirt road?
Wendell line.
You know, is Wendell about the same? You know, if you want to compare your police department, who do you compare it to? You know, all by rights, we've lost everything. We've lost our post office, we've lost our store, we lost our inn, we lost our prison camp. We really have nothing here. So we have no state highway to go through. So who do you compare it to, like? You know, you can only pick.
I'll do a survey for you if you want.
There's only certain parts of a town that you can actually kind of pick out. You just can't take one town and say.
No, I will put together a list of 15 towns for you. And I'll do all the research.
Right, when we did the survey, let's say the police department last year, we had that survey in front of us, and the chief did a good job pointing out the places that were close to who we are and what they're getting paid. We were still
not fairly close to
very underpaid.
and everything up here.
Not close to the size and our demographic and everything. So that's what.
I just, from what I've researched on it so far, everybody gets very well paid here. For a town that has probably the least of money of all the other towns, the smallest tax base.
Yeah, we're not a rich little town, that's for sure.
No, and we're just losing more and more people. 5 houses were sold last year in this town. 3 of them at over $20,000 to $30,000 losses of below assessment. And I'll tell you what, Wyatt West is not going to increase those assessments to make up that value either. So it's basically, the town is dying.
Actually, that information is totally contrary to what I received in my mailbox, and many of you did, from a real estate agent named Pam Veth lately. And I think it was an attempt to say, hey, time to sell your house, call me up. But it was quite impressive to me how many houses sold consistent with our valuations and higher. And of course, that's what everybody wants. When it's time to tax it, they want the house to be worth as little as possible. When it's time to sell it, you want it to be worth as much as possible. But I was thinking that the next reval was probably going to show lower housing values. And when you throw out a couple of foreclosures, which you do because they're not market transactions, just fire sales, distress sales, things were pretty consistently selling in this community for more than they were praised.
Yeah, I think the town has got some real prices on some of the real estate they sold. They lost on some, it's coming back.
Yeah.
It's a tricky situation. But I don't see the town growing.
So we're still discussing the cost of living. What are we requesting? Anything on the floor?
I guess I'd consider a modest raise if the budget comes in halfway reasonable. You know, I just don't know what's coming for surprises. You know, I don't know.
I agree. I think that we need to look at the overall budget before we make that decision. We need the numbers in front of us to do that. And I don't think we can make an educated assessment moment until we have that information in front of us, and we don't have it. So, a meeting needs to be held, budgets need to be presented by the various departments, and we need to take a look at it.
There've
And
been
and
two
if there's-
suggestions here, I guess. One is hold off until you see the rest of the budget. The other is hold off until we hear from the personnel committee.
No, I would withdraw that. I think we're gonna get
I'm sorry.
I'll withdraw that suggestion. I think looking at the budget situation is what maybe.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not saying either or. I'm
Yeah.
thinking both.
And I don't have an issue
I
with.
don't think we want
It's more
to
practical.
hold off very long in putting out
A guidance
a
to
COLA for discussion. And I think the COLA, I would be inclined to put out for discussion is 1.4. With a possible, and this is for discussion, and I'm sure the police department won't be very happy with that, is a possible exception from the COLA to the police department, which got handled exceptional raises in the last year. And therefore, they're presumably not hurting nearly as badly as everybody else.
Bill?
Well, I think, I agree with what, the other members have said as well. I think it's important to look at the budgets and really have an idea of what each group is coming in at. I think it's premature to exclude anybody, at this juncture. I think we made, good and well-educated decisions last year with the decisions that we made. And I think, I'm confident we'll make those same decisions this year. I just think we need to really take a look at some of the numbers and really look at what each department is. I'm inclined to offer something to, folks. I mean, I don't think that any of us can say that, that anyone, employed by the town isn't deserving of, some additional financial compensation. Everyone worked hard over this last year, and we wanna, try to offer some incentive for folks to deliver the same service next year. So, I'm inclined to lean in that direction, but I think it's premature until we see the numbers as well.
But I also think it's a good idea, whoever mentioned comparing last year's budget to this year's budget and justifying any increase, with the comparison.
Agreed, I think that's definitely part of the process.
A little more investigation into what the most people.
We can do that on almost the after the fact. You would have to direct them to do the draconian part, which would be, they'd have to come with a stack of paper and approve how much money they want to put in the budget. On our side, I'd be totally fine with looking at what the accountant has. So I don't know if maybe we have a split decision here on, perhaps not, the finance committee says, we're gonna hold out and say, we don't agree with any raise until we see the numbers, and maybe you folks do something different to get the numbers in, and then we would hold reserve judgment till later with the numbers.
Maybe we should give ourselves a time for this, because of course it's only fair for the employees to know what is likely to be coming down the line for them in some ways. And I don't know, we might give ourselves till the end of next month, for instance, to decide on whether we're doing a COLA and a cleaner. It's still tentative, because everything's tentative, but.
I guess I see the COLA as being, if we have the money, we should definitely go with the prevailing winds. Whatever the Social Security gets, that's usually what I've been doing for the last many years, thinking that if that's what the Social Security raise is, then that's really where we should probably be. But I don't know where our budget is, and that's why you all have to look at the budget. and
So
go,
it's $20 needs on social security and our taxes went up $30.
You realize that in your town, you have people 70 years old pushing cars to pay their bills. And 70 years old, that's a ways off for you, but some of us are there
Maybe
right off.
there should be more research into what the value of what the people, what they're getting for a salary, whether it be retirement or working, versus, you know, what the state allows for a budget or what the budget. Hey, if you have to close things down, so shut libraries or cut things back, do it, because there's only so much money a person can put out. That should be the number one priority is, how much money does the town have? We're not a rich town. And it seems like you're going from the opposite end.
We need to look at the budget so we can make those decisions, and that's what you're saying, is
Yeah.
how much money do
And
we
right-
have,
and
how
right
much money
now-
do we- that's what we're saying.
Right now, I think that what the taxes are now is astronomical now. I can't think of anything that would warrant it to go up higher. These people don't have any more. Like I said, 60% of the population over
Every
50.
year.
Didn't seem true at the last town meeting. 50% of your tax dollars, better than, not a lot better, but better than 50% of your tax dollars is spent on schools.
I understand that, and we can
Excuse
get more
me, I
people
was
at the town meeting.
One person at a time, please.
So 50% on the schools, and there was a clear majority in support of overriding the recommendation of the Finance Committee and the Select Board. So I don't really know what to expect. I don't expect an hour and a half long meeting like we've had a number of in the past 5 years. But as far as the outcome goes, I see a lot of people who are apparently overhoused. If they can't afford their taxes, what are they gonna do when the economy gets a little better and interest rates start to get real and that variable rate mortgage kicks in?
I know some people that applied for that years ago, and they did that, but maybe someone took them out.
Oh, you gotta be sure they did.
We have a hand over here.
Well, if you spend 50% on schools, why don't you take the other 50% and cut it in half? Because we don't need all this. We really don't.
What do you
Cut it in half.
You don't like driving over
That
the
was-
roads?
You know, that's not the part of it.
You
You
just
know,
said to
I-
cut it in half, I'm not sure what you're talking about cutting in half.
Cutting 25% of your budget is what he's talking about.
We only make so much money.
25% of the budget, and work from there, because that's more realistic figure for the people you have in town valuations, and what the people can afford.
I think we need to look very hard at a very sensitive area, and that is this cost of schools. We need to find alternatives. We can't, they just keep pushing it up, and David has made great efforts, and Mr. Bradford, they spent a lot of time researching and coming up with a proposal to the school for their IT budget that would give them adequate services for a lot less than $400,000. And they just about smirked and said, thank you, goodbye. So if that's what we're fighting against, we really need to look hard at some other mechanism to back out of that school system, to merge our school with some other system. It's time we did that.
I agree with you. The schools in Massachusetts, per child, is very expensive. I think it's 17,000 something for people in the state of Massachusetts. It's very high.
It's 15.
Okay. The problem with the schools is you've got one of the biggest labor unions, or the biggest labor union bus really. If you can figure out how to do it, there will probably be a lot of people on board. But it's one big elephant down the way.
Yes. That's why we have David.
Well, here's what I know.
You know, if we went running down to Orange, would it really help us if we went to Manhattan instead of Northfield? No, I don't know what they pay per pupil. I don't know. You know, all in all together, they're doing the same thing that we're doing. We're kind of looking at somebody else's salary, whether it's the guy in the fire department or the guy on the highway department. You know, the teachers at Manhattan just got a raise. We deserve one too. And it's a big animal to break, and the school cost is, it's a lot of money, no doubt about it. And how to break it, I don't know.
They get step increases, which they don't consider increases, and then they get cost of living on top of that, so, it's really.
I think the towns need to be more present during the negotiations. I really do.
Yeah,
Get-
well,
get-
last Thursday was the Pioneer budget hearing, and I didn't see anybody there but that school committee member and this school committee member. And I held up the hearing. The committee chairman says, oh, time to vote on it. I said, wait a minute. This is a hearing. I haven't heard anything from a town official, from anybody except, and a couple of people said a little bit, but the maximum budget that the district can now bring to the towns was voted, and there were 3 school committee members who voted against it. It wasn't even covered in the newspaper.
Yeah, but because they say you can bring it to the town, doesn't mean the town has to pay it. That's my theory. And if they say they want 50% pay increase, you're not gonna pay it. You have to be a little realistic. You don't have.
John,
You
the
don't have
question is,
tax
can we
base.
afford 3.5% plus a COLA? And when I suggested with respect to contract negotiations that pay increases be merit-based, couldn't move it an inch. Couldn't move it an inch.
They got you by the short term, isn't I know?
Well, it seems to me that when we have a school board that just hands us a higher budget every year and says, take it or leave it, what we need is more leverage in the system. And the one way I can think of getting more leverage in the system is to say, you know, guys, you can do that if you want, but we're looking very seriously at dismantling this, the school system. We'll do it ourselves. Only we have to make them take that seriously. We have to start planning seriously for that. And that's, I think, the key to getting more leverage with the school board, to find out what towns are willing to look at that reasonably seriously, not making a commitment to, we're gonna take it over, but making a commitment to study in some detail. And we find out in studying it, there are ways that we could handle schools that are a lot cheaper than the way they handle schools. Then we've got some leverage over them. Because if they're gonna lose their whole, program, they better listen to it. So I think the next step here is to do that, is to go to the other towns, see who is willing to go into a mode of, we're looking at dismantling the district, here's what it will cost us, here's what the benefits will be. And that requires a lot of planning on our part about whether we're gonna hire consultants, whether we're gonna do it ourselves, if we're gonna do it ourselves, who are the people competent to do it. But we need to start moving.
I know you keep looking at me, Nick, but I can't say anything on this, because my wife's a teacher down there, so.
What would it take?
Leave it to those folks.
What would it take to actually say, no, we're not going to pay $800,000 this year, take the damn money and just say, hey, we'll subsidize these kids in town where we got 35 of them to go to another school. We'd be saving money. And it would be in an interest-bearing account. It would actually build a fund for these kids all the time. We'd subsidize our own kids to go
Actually,
anywhere
what
they
it
want.
does take, and it don't take that much,
Mhm.
is the people that feel that way to show up to the town meeting and say no.
I agree.
Rather than to be on the outside of the common and complain about it, they're
No,
gonna get
that's-
involved and say, you know what, I don't feel like spending the money.
Yeah, well, that's it.
That's all it takes.
The important thing
It's
is
no
to
big
get,
deal.
get people at the end.
You know,
Okay.
if you take the regional budget, you're gonna have to have the support of another town. It's not just one town's vote. You'll have to have another town
For
vote.
instance, get Warwick to go with them for years.
They have. But what people have to do is show up to vote. That's all you need to do.
And if they have a tax rate when you go up, really?
If, I've got 2 kids in school. You know, this IT was a big thing. I'm sorry, I voted for the IT. I got a daughter that's in 10th grade, a son that's a senior. And you know what? If they can get modern technology over there, I have no problem with my child learning on it.
Well, I'm all for kids having the best.
I'm sure that you, I don't think you have any children, don't feel that way.
No,
But
I do feel that way. I do feel.
But I did feel that way on that issue.
But, and
But if I've got little Tommy in school,
Mhm.
and you're thinking about cutting the budget, I'll tell you right now, I'm coming to this meeting and I'm gonna vote for little Tommy.
And you should.
And if you decide not to show up, well, I really don't feel like complaining tonight,
No, no.
that's your own fault. See what I'm saying? You're gonna show up to vote. That's all you gotta do.
I understand that, and I have been, you can ask these people, they're tired of seeing me now, because it's driving me disappointed. And I am so busy with other things right now, but you're right, if I had kids to, I would vote the same way as you, but there's gotta be a better way for those kids to have that same education than paying all this money for the number of kids we got in this town. We could take these kids and send them to the best schools, subsidizing them for less money. Is all I'm saying. So, yes, if it takes it in your town meeting to just get here, get enough people, say, no, we're not approving the budget, fine. I'll do everything I can to get people in. But for what we're paying, for the number of kids here, it doesn't seem like a fair share compared to the rest of the towns. What do they got, 40 schools in the town, in the district?
40 what?
They got 40 schools in the district, or 30?
You got 4 schools in the district, in the regional district.
4
The
elementary
regional
schools
district.
and a
Four
high school.
in high school.
Total of 5 campuses. However, Warwick has 38 kids.
But I mean, I'm sorry, how many towns?
4.
Only 4 towns?
That's why I said, Berniston and Warwick, that's 2, exactly for that budget.
Oh, I thought you were dealing with a lot more towns.
Even
Even better. Yeah. Berniston wants some?
They've been after these guys for years. All you gotta do is talk to them.
Get in touch with Berniston.
Yeah.
And I don't want to deprive the
Those
kids of
guys
a
over
good
there,
education at
most
all.
are farmers or loggers
So
or
don't misunderstand
nobody
that.
making any.
My kids have the opportunity, good education, college and everything. I wouldn't deprive any kid of that, but I don't see us paying ridiculous amount of money.
So the teachers can drive their
So,
students.
yeah.
But where's the tuition rate other than there? You don't buy all new equipment the first year and they all appreciate it. At the same time, when you buy something and let it go down, you keep adding the next year and you don't have that much to spend. But they wanted everything brand new, right?
They wouldn't take the other stuff. They didn't take it. What are you talking about?
Well, you guys are right that I don't have the only plan that's out there. The other major plan that's out there is organizing 2 towns to make a real effort to vote down the school budget. That also is going to give leverage. I think we need to choose one or both of those as things we are going to do. And not just sit back and wait for them to hand hand us a budget that we gotta vote for because it's there. But the finance committee and the board of selectmen, determined that they are going to go one or both of those routes. If not, we're gonna get the same thing over and over every year, year after year. They'll hand us a budget, we don't have any choice
Would it send a nice signal if the select board said they're in talks with the town of Berthoud about the options? That alone would start to wake up the,
I think you'd actually have to do it.
well, I mean, just the out and out, making it for the public that, you know, that you are discussing it, would maybe wake them up that you're serious about listening to, like, you know, like David said, they get up, they don't want to listen to him and stuff like that, you know.
They don't want anything.
It would give him leverage at the meeting to, it's a publicly known.
Well, David, didn't you just have a budget meeting with the Pioneer there a week or so ago? Did they have their proposed budget or whatever?
Yeah, had a hearing, had 4 meetings.
You know, when with Pioneer just barely passing last year, how was it? Was it business as usual, or did they feel that, you know, we got kind of what we asked for, we need this year? You know, what was close last year, is it sky's the limit? You know, how was the feeling of it? Or it had no bearing on it at all? You know, I would think if I
The
was.
committee is more divided than it's been in the past. I am in the minority, and I feel my views are very unwelcome. Perhaps you might want to comment. Another school committee members here in the room.
I did bring up, I think 3 years ago, that this exact situation, that we have angry taxpayers, and there's people that are highly concerned over the tax rate. It's not just in our town, what I like to speak about is our town. And I indicated that I think that, you know, the process that you've been discussing over the past few minutes might actually take place in the future. And again, I'm in the minority, along with a couple other members. I don't think it's business as usual, but I think the mindset is that we're gonna get our way one way or the other. So, and I don't think there's anything capricious about it. They're not being mean about it. They're there to do, you know, the principals submit a budget, the district submits a budget, and that's what they feel they need to live with, so.
What I'm arguing is that we've got to reinvent, that the problems we have are the result of continuing to do business in the same ways. Well, you know, when the corner store finds itself with half as many customers buying half as many stuff and spending half as many dollars, they've either got to find a way to increase their margins or they've got to make changes. And that's what I feel is not happening. And I think it means that we just haven't brought it, this concern for the level of costs and the continuously increasing costs hasn't been brought forward. And there's, the town's got, in terms of this year's budget process, 2 ways to go. In the past, we tended to we have either negotiated something with the school committee that finance committee and the select board could live with, or this past year, it basically blew us off and got their number voted. The question though becomes, if you read the state law, what the town meeting really needs to do is either vote the budget up or down. And then if the budget's voted down, the school committee meets and comes up with a new budget. And they can send the same budget back if they've got enough census. Or they can make changes and come back to If that process goes on and on and on, and it could, then what happens is you get the same budget as last year. The district goes to the State Board of Education, and it's the same that would happen to a town that can't get its ducks in a row and vote a budget. Then you get last year's budget. Well, if you can't afford last year's budget, you're just walking over to the end of the dock. So I've really been of two minds. Last year, my thought was, on this technology thing, we learned that the school committee can vote to indebt the district, and therefore the town. And the only thing the town can legally say is no, by putting it on town meeting and voting it down. And I responded to the superintendent at the budget hearing when she said, the town's approved 400. No, the town did not approve. We failed to disapprove it. There's a difference. We need a strategy as to whether we do what's been done over the years, and the school committee may ask for more money than we want, and we vote less. And then what the district has done is taken those various authorizations and done the math and said, well, it's not what we're looking for, but we did get a budget that's this much less approved. And I think I've talked myself into saying that's probably what we need to do, is come up with an alternate number and vote it. Because if we follow the state law and just say no, and the school committee comes back with the same budget or a somewhat lower budget, and we call a special town meeting, and we vote it down again, we'll get ourselves into the next fiscal year pretty quickly with last year's budget. And if we can't afford that, then we create a situation where we're doubling the cuts because we don't end up making the decisions until December, but we've spent money all the way up the first half of the year at a level that we can't sustain. The school committee, and only the school committee, says what the money's going for. So we can study it from the town side until we're blue in the face and say, we figured it out. Cut this, cut that. Adds up to this, we vote that down. The school committee is not in any way bound to make those cuts. There is no way. The school committee knows better. That's just the way it's. The town meeting can approve or disapprove its assessment. But as far as the budget itself, that's why I ran for school committee, because that's where the decisions are.
Would your recommendation be to set a number, these two committees set a number and go to the school board and say, that's our number. If you're over it, we're working to get the vote of the town to deny it. If you're under it, we're not. Take it or leave it, like we have to take yours or leave it. Would you be in favor of doing that?
Sounds like a reasonable tactic. However, the supporters of increased spending at the schools would have every right to organize against that effort and to bring that higher amount before the town and pass it. So not only...
To be sure, the question is whether you think it would be feasible to win or feasible to put a sufficient fear to the town, to the school board.
I don't think the majority thinks they have a problem, the school committee think they have a problem. I don't think the majority of the school committee think
well,
there is a problem.
if two towns did that though,
they'll say you can't deliver it. Look what happened last year. You can't deliver the vote.
well,
Yeah, let's do it, but
if we work from here to there to say that's the town's position and that here is why it's the town's position, do you think we could get the votes? It is, it's a campaign that goes from here till full town meeting. It's not just we do that at town meeting.
Chief?
That tactic was what basically we tried last year. The school committee, the finance committee, and the select board recommended the number for the assessment. All it takes is one person to make a motion on the floor to vote the higher number, which is what happened last year. And then there was a majority that voted it. So anybody can organize any type of campaign. But all it's gonna do is take one motion on the floor, 1 second, and then a little discussion on how, well, this is kind of late now to try to, emasculate the school, and the kids deserve this, and we need a new guy, and that's basically what happened. So, and like David said, and I agree fully, the school board, the school committee doesn't think there's a problem. They don't think, they may know there's a problem, this is my personal opinion, they may know there's a problem.
I've put 2 suggestions on the table. One is that, when you say it won't work, period, end story. The other is studying pulling the school department out of existence. We're gonna take up this thing at the local level and do it ourselves. That's the other possibility, and I don't see that there are any other ways of handling their control over us. So what about that one?
Who's gonna do that?
Who's gonna do
Who's
that?
gonna organize that?
Well, that's what I asked, 20 minutes after work, we could do it.
Who's gonna put, realistically, who's got the knowledge and the abilities and the time to organize such a thing and do it? If you can get a committee to do it, more power to you, but I don't know who, I certainly would not be able to do such a thing, and you'd have to have
Agreed.
believers in it to do
It seems to me that we look amongst ourselves whether there's the talent to do that. And if there is not, then we hire the talent to do it. Because those are the only 2 things we can do. And what I would be inclined to do is to put the wheels in motion to make that happen. That is, either we are going to find local talent, or we are going to purchase talent to see whether we can create our own school system.
So who's gonna organize that?
I'm sorry?
Who's gonna take that step? Are you gonna head that up?
I can make it as a motion right here and now if you want.
That's not what she's
I'm
asking.
asking the people, who's the human being that's gonna make that step happen?
Well,
That's
either
my
of our
question.
boards is capable of saying, we've looked around, we don't have the expertise, we need to hire a consultant. And
Who's gonna
that
look
would be the
around?
first step.
Who's gonna do the looking around? That's my question. Who's gonna start this ball rolling? Who's gonna do the looking around?
Well, I'm certainly willing to take the step of this is our position. And the looking around is probably something I would say ought to be done by the people who are in the business of handling our finances, which are David and you guys and the select board. We collectively look around. That's all I can say.
There's a lot of similarities between the school system and the broadband question, because they both have to do with scale. If we had enough population to fill that school instead of running multi-age classrooms with 8, 9, 10 kids, 11 kids, 9 to 11 describes half the classrooms in our local elementary school. It's very similar. And question of, how do we reinvent, do we pull out of the district? These are not short-term solutions, and we're concerned about both, but it ain't gonna happen in, for FY16 or 17. But the first thing I'm struck with talking about tuition kids out, pull out of the district and tuition, is that about 55% of the cost of education is borne by the taxpayer. And I think Northfield, being a wealthier town, actually may take a little bit more of a hit than we do. But would we, in effect, take that state aid off, which is a big part of the other piece of funding that gets us to our $15,000 we spend per kid? Would we be taking that off the table? And that's part of the question we ask. I'm committed to banging at the district to say we can find ways to lower our costs, but we've got to dump some of our sacred cows. When we regionalized in 1990-ish, we ran our own elementary school. Selectmen signed the teachers' paychecks. We had a local school committee. Principal answered to the local school committee. And in about 1990, maybe 91, something like that, we fully regionalized. And there was a financial carrot. At that time, before we fully regionalized, we were part of a supervisory union that meant that the superintendent was the superintendent of our school. But we had our own school committee, our own financial, and the carrot that was held out to give up the local school at that time, which incidentally had over 100 kids in it, where we now have 38 of our kids. The carrot was everybody gets their own school. And when we built that school, we had 100 kids in the old school that we tore down, vastly overcrowded, and the state said, we'll pay 70% of the school, but you gotta build a school for the future. Well, that's what we got. And it turned out it wasn't our future. So it's complicated stuff, and we gotta work both tracks. I'm not feeling like I'm getting much purchase at the school district, at the school committee to do this. So we need to do it as towns. But it ain't gonna settle the problem that Vern and Steve and Bob are here about. It's a solution, but it's not a short-term solution.
Well, we're not talking about short-term. I mean, we have over 50% of the budget every year, year in, year out, going to the school system. And so it shall always be unless we come up with a long-term solution.
Now, my recommendation is both. We work on a long-term solution, which includes either reinventing the current district or counter planning. And then at the same time, we've got to work on reining in the expenses of our current way of doing business and looking at ways that we can rationalize.
Well, I'm suggesting that the long-term solution is also to some extent short-term, because if they see us as taking that seriously, they'll start listening to us a little more.
Okay, we'll just disagree.
I'm sorry?
We will just disagree. I don't think that, I've been shooting rounds over their bow for the last 3 months. I think I've basically become a little boy who calls them wolves.
Yeah.
I gotta say that the administration is extremely respectful and extremely responsive with information. And a fair enough portion of the time, I'm lacking understanding of basic stuff. But rather than saying, you dummy, I say, let's look at early retirement. And I get from the superintendent, look at page 68 and 9 of the current contract. So, my answer is, okay, well, maybe we need to shore that up a little bit, because when we have teachers that make 65,000 or 70 who could retire now and be replaced with teachers making in the 40s. There's a cost savings. Both, gotta do both.
Agreed. I don't know where we take it from here,
Isn't this kind of the feeling we wanted to do across the board? There were some people out here that showed up and wasn't just on the school to look at things across the board. You know, it wasn't just the schools, it was all the departments. I don't know if that's why you guys are here.
The school is the hardest thing to deal with.
The school
We're
is the
talking
hardest
about,
thing.
the rest of it is easy to take care
Oh,
of.
I realize David's on the school committee.
And do that long-term.
I was on it for a short time myself, and I'll say this, that superintendent is very well organized over there, and she does have her ducks in a row. You know, and I do think that the time that I spent over there, with the towns presenting a budget of what they could afford, was taken into consideration. Did they always hit it? No. I realized this IT thing last year, the 400,000, did kind of put some hot potatoes on the stove. But, on the other hand, what is their budget up year over year? We as a town have different departments that are up a lot more than what Pioneer is year over year. You know, I think we gotta just kind of look at the whole picture here and not pick on one individual and look at what we're spending our money on. You know, are these the only 2 or 3 guys here that hate their tax bill every year? Probably not.
A lot more, but they couldn't get to the early
Okay.
meetings.
What I'm saying is probably not, but people gotta show and say their mind, you know what I mean? I'm glad to see you guys come. You know, we've had all kinds of finance committee meetings, nobody's really shown up for them. You know, we kinda got something to gauge it by.
Well, I think,
It helps.
yes, and I'm continuing to try and get more people to come, and we will get more people to come. Today was just a bad day because we weren't sure if there was gonna be a meeting, didn't know if the snowstorm was gonna come by and whatnot. And, like I said, early hours, which you remedied that, a lot of people just aren't home from work. But you're right, there are a lot of people that are interested, but just aren't home from work yet, and couldn't make these meetings, and weren't aware of them as much. Now we're posting the sign outside every time there's a select board meeting, and I have a group of people that notify people about meeting and the agendas and everything, and it'll just keep increasing. And I hopefully will just keep these seats filled and start giving you guys a lot more input as to what's everybody is coming from. Because I know you can only do with what the limited input you've been getting. And that's everybody in town's fault who hasn't been here, including me. So, but we're here to change that now, so, and I'm just gonna keep working at it. And by the time the town meeting, annual meeting comes up, let's see if we can make a difference. And that's all this is all about.
May I ask that my two alternatives be taken before your committee and voted yea or nay, and taken before the, select board and voted yea or nay? I'm sorry?
Maybe Rosa can read back what it.
Rose is clueless, I'm sorry. I'm also frozen, so, you know. I don't know exactly
The
what it's
two
talking about.
proposals are,
Threaten the school with,
one is a campaign starting now to tell the, school committee that we're going to give them a dollar figure on the maximum and make sure our voters understand that they need to vote no if the maximum is exceeded, a campaign to do that. That's one. And I hear from David and that that's infeasible. Maybe it's infeasible, okay. The other proposal is to start the wheels rolling on a, of a feasibility study of leaving the district. And I think both of those proposals go along with attempts to find another town which will go along with us on both of those things. And that's my proposal. Any,
I mean, I don't, I think we're open to any and all, you know, in the same vein as we're trying to all find solutions to lower costs and, ultimately lower the cost to the town residents. I think we'd be willing to talk and consider any of these alternatives. So I don't have any specific objection to any of them. I mean, I think the
He's
point
looking
that
for,
was.
we need a motion over here in a second and a vote on our side.
Yeah, I think I'm just trying to get, I mean, I understand in theory, the two proposals, but are you looking for a motion that we form a committee, that we document this in writing? I'm just trying to understand more specifically
First
what
step
you're
is- the
moving.
first step
I understand the
is
two
for
theories
you
that you're talking about.
Is for you to adopt a motion that says that these, one or the other of these two things is a thing the town is committed to do. We as a committee are committed to do it. And if you're not, then you're not. If you are, we can start working on it. And same for the select board.
Well, Nick, I think as for setting on a dollar figure, or a percentage figure, well, we said we had heavy snow and ice, and you know what, we're looking at a dollar increase, we want a 0% increase, or we want to decrease it some. I think it's kind of a fair thing. I as a taxpayer, until you could say, you know what, the kids down in Manahara are spending $12,000 a year, instead of $15,000 a year per student, or Mohawk Regional up there is doing the same, and you could show me some savings in the area. Or if we went over to Athol and looked over at Athol and see what they're paying per student. I think I need a rough idea before I'd even consider steps to say that we're looking at. But before I said that I was looking out at jumping out of Pioneer, I don't think that's my decision. I think that decision is up to the voters of the town of Warwick.
Absolutely, but.
Not me as a
decision
finance
of-
committee or you as a selectman.
Absolutely.
That should be on the town meeting floor.
But
It's
the
my feeling
decision
on it.
of researching the yeas or nays is something that we can make as a committee and a board. We're not saying we're gonna do it, of course you're right, it's up to the voters. But we can say we're going to start researching these issues seriously. That's something we could do.
You know, we've had that headline already, Nick, are you aware of that?
Yeah.
So now it's time to do it.
I'm sorry?
It's time to do it.
Yeah,
The problem is, we probably don't have the in-house capacity.
I think
Do
that's
ourselves.
probably true, which
So it's
means
gonna-
we gotta look at, probably what we need to do is to look at a budget proposal for getting the outhouse, and then it's before the voters, are we going to take this issue seriously? And that's a good step.
Make a suggestion, if you just suggested a feasibility study to put before the annual town meeting, which is a non-binding vote by the people, for you to look into those two options and get the feel of the people.
Well, what would be binding is a budget figure on how much money we're gonna put into the effort.
Well, that part of it, yes, but I'm
That's
talking
binding,
about
and
the
that
part,
would be before the voters.
I'm talking about the part about getting out of the school district, something. You could put that before the annual meeting as a non-binding vote. Yes, would you be in favor of us looking
I'll
into it?
straw vote on
Right.
what their sense was about staying or going.
Mhm. Yes.
Makes sense.
Just so that then now you have something to work with as to how many are behind you are willing to. If it's a 50-50, you guys are in trouble. But if it becomes 70-30, then you really got something to work with.
On the other hand, if you get 50% plus one that says, yeah, we're, even though we don't like our tax bill, we think we need to appropriate these tens of thousands
Right,
of dollars
and
to hire experts to
That's when you guys
study
earn the big
this.
bucks.
That's when we know there's seriousness too. Because if I'm inclined to vote against it at the straw poll, I'm certainly gonna vote against it when it comes to actually spending money to study it.
If it's a 50-50 vote, then it basically says that what you're doing is fine. But at least you would know.
I don't know, 50% said, yeah, spend money that we really don't wanna part with.
And the other
Study getting
50%
out.
said you're doing fine, and it's gonna come
Or I
down
don't
to-
wanna spend the money. There's just the whole thing of, we don't need any professional capacity around here. We need to save money by lowering our costs, no matter the effect.
Well, you make a pretty good case for we're not able to do the latter. You're getting stonewalled. And so we need to do something to make them not stonewall.
Dripping water will erode rock, but do we have time?
I'm sorry?
Dripping water will erode rocks. Do we have the time?
Do we have the time?
To wait. Jerry, do we have anything else?
I do not want
I mean, I'm more than willing to put anything on the table, so I don't, I think I'm a little cautious about wording something in the manner to say, we're approving this effort, but I don't wanna be obstructionist to any effort to save money. So I mean, I think if there's an opportunity to put something out there and gauge people's interest and alternatives to what we're doing today, I'm all for that. I'm absolutely all for that. Again, I say that with a cautionary note that I'm not throwing the full weight of my support behind it, in that I don't know that this is the best decision. But I'm also saying, much like we said, let's look at all the individual department budgets and see what we can do, where our money is best spent. The same thing with this. If this is half of our budget, I'm absolutely on board with looking at any alternatives to how to best spend that money. So in that sense, yeah, I think if we can come up with something that's worded appropriately that way, I'm definitely behind it. I don't know how you feel.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same, but before we,
I haven't heard the good word.
no, I haven't heard the good wording either, but some basic information of what we're paying per student and stuff, I think is pretty much public information. And I think we could grab that pretty quick off the computer of what the other towns are spending. And it's not so much dependent on the size of the town. It's pretty much gonna come in, I believe, across every regional school. Mohawk, I think would be a good school to put there. It's a relatively small towns that go in that school, it's a regional school. Orange, I think, would be probably pretty close, but they haven't got the transportation costs like Mohawk would have. If this is a serious proposal, and you can show people, if we're spending $15,000 per student, and they're spending 13 or 12, and if we gotta spend $100,000 to get them out, people's probably not gonna go through it. But if you can show a savings, we would save some substantial money, they probably would. Is there fat in the Pioneer budget? There's no doubt about it. There's fat in everybody's budget if you look for it. But I think you've gotta show a savings, where it's really being thrown out of place, and what are we spending per child? I'd like to know that, and how much out of whack is that? No, I think it's actually up to our school committee members, and every town has them, to kind of enforce it, and they bring that budget to us. You know, we're hearing that they feel that it's fair. You know, and there's a lot of waste over there. I'm taking it into consideration. You know, how much are we spending? I don't know. I never really looked at that. Yeah, that's some information that I personally, as a voter, need. I've got no problem looking into it and seeing how much of a whack it is.
It's probably a good starting point. It's obviously a good starting point.
I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Well, you know, the school.
Okay.
Can I talk? So, there was no motions, nothing was voted.
Correct.
Okay.
Pardon?
There was no motion on the schools, nothing was voted. So we're back to, we didn't take any motions or do anything on the COLA either.
Have you managed to get to, where are we here? I'm lost. Was that a report on the PPRS budget?
That was.
Sounds like one.
So, we're on discussion of format, development of glossary, capital plan.
We discussed capital plan.
Right, and it's not just, my view is not totally capital planning, it's unbudgeted planning. If you know something that might be capital, but it's gonna cost $10,000 for 4 years, I wanna know about it, you know about it in 4 years.
We have an excellent glossary from a class that Kirk gave. And this service, I think, the glossary we could use. It was explaining very well. And I have a copy somewhere, I'll do that. Send it forward to you.
Will that help the departments bring stuff to us?
Well,
Or us drag it out of them?
well,
Projections.
I think it was requested as something that voters, especially voters who are newly getting involved in town meeting, some naturally feel intimidated by the amount of jargon. You know, I don't care what.
Okay, this doesn't make sense.
so that was.
Define our terms before we start arguing. And then the question of the format, just had, is there a better way to present this? I've looked at some other towns. Town meeting members do not look at the 19 items in the highway budget and the 16 items in the police budget, et cetera. They just see police, salary, wages. I'm not convinced that making radical changes to the budget format that our voters have seen for year after year necessarily a good idea, but I want to put the question out there.
It was brought up in one of the previous more populated meetings that they liked the idea of seeing how much was appropriated and how much was approved and what was taken out and the rest. And they like more
Okay.
information so they can make comparisons. And by the same token, they wanted explanation of terms, and that's what
That's what that.
we were looking for a glossary too.
They want more information, but just
Yeah,
one line item?
remember,
We used to have the,
we
what
used
the department put in for the money, or the school,
yeah,
and then what,
You used to have
Which committee?
recommendations and requests.
right, that's it.
that was it, yeah.
When I got here, we basically banged it out between the committee, the select board, the finance committee, and until this past year, it was, where is it? Well, it went away like 7 years ago. Because,
Everything was going smooth.
well, and we all pretty much understood the conditions. I mean, there were times when guys at Starrett's were working short hours, and there was years when we said, you know, we're not going for raises, our goal is gonna be to try to not have any layoffs. And everybody got in sync. We were asked last week, invited to school committee meeting anyway, town members of the administration, asked, what can you afford? And we told them, just like years before, they said, thank you very much. But then, at the most recent town meeting, where was our request versus recommendation? Well, we didn't even know that we were, getting called out and that the full amount was gonna be acted on the floor. So probably do need to get back to requests and whatever, but
That might be the only line I would think that we would need. We
yeah,
have what
I
the
think,
current
I
budget
think
is,
departments are
request-
pretty respectful of the select board and the finance committee recommendations that, hey, no, don't go there. It's not part of this year's plan, can't afford it.
So would the glossary help explain better what we have in our budget?
Yeah, like, I can think of-
Appropriation.
Oh, right, they always go through this.
the items in that budget.
Raise and appropriate, all the different
Yeah,
What
gimmicks.
what is borrow, what is just appropriate mean?
and then,
David's been doing
debt
something
exclusion,
short.
that kind of
Right.
thing, they don't understand all that. so.
Right, I think you're absolutely right. For the town meeting and for our planning, we should understand it well.
I would volunteer to do that, to just go through the budget, every item and make sure that there's an explanation, a glossary item that explains it.
On the, like a back page,
Yeah.
that we hand out.
Yeah, that makes
But I think perhaps we could do it by exception. For many years, whatever was put in, requested, was what we recommended. Was it not, David? There might have been a
I
couple
thought
of-
it more like what we recommended became what was requested.
That's probably true.
That's,
True. Oh,
that's absolutely true. We had, just with the police department last year, I submitted 3 budgets, and what was requested was what was actually finally recommended. The 2 dovetail at the end.
After you re-requested about 4 times.
I submitted 3 budgets.
Take this back and work on
Yeah,
this part.
that's,
Right.
I took
Lower
the
that.
advice of the finance committee and the select board, and then what I finally wound up requesting was what you recommended, because it
Okay.
was.
right.
Negotiate.
So, I don't have any problem putting that requested back in. It'll look kind of hokey if somebody gold plates their thing saying, I want $100,000 and their last year budget was 25.
No, they just want.
Somebody might have a question, it might take time in the town meeting to explain, why do they have 100,000 and we're only putting 25? And I guess that makes sense.
There might only be one budget like that.
There might only be one.
They might have to do some investigation in Peru or Jamaica. You know, 20 grand go pretty good down there.
Yeah.
Keep it warm all winter.
So I don't think we need to vote on that one, do we? That's just a good idea. I don't know, sort of like the school, which I can't really talk about except for, looks like we're looking for a long-term plan and a, what are we doing right now? That's what this thing was about, is get that out of them for the long term, and then we can all scrutinize what they spent it on last year and what do we think they should need this year. If we could get that done, I'd be totally happy, but I don't know about you folks.
That makes sense.
Is that something the select board can get to the departments, just to say, the advice is we didn't come up with any COLA. We didn't vote on anything, but whatever their projected knowledge is, they tell us about for many years to come, and also do the best they can on tightening their budget. And we'll, when they give us all that, we can look at it and say what maybe the COLA can, what we can afford, what we can't. Is that what I'm hearing from you folks?
No, I think if we're looking at a dollar tax increase now, I think anything else is kind of getting pretty tight.
questions on the
Well, the
agenda?
requested school budget increase I voted the other night will be over 5%. And that's, I'm sorry, it's not the budget increase, that's the effect of the assessment. The budget increase is only 2-point-something%, but because only about half of the budget comes from the town, and because the other half, school choice, tuition, and state aid to education, doesn't go up, all the increase falls on the town. And that's why we're sometimes talking in circles with school committee types, because we talk about the budget.
But you're saying our cut that we're gonna have to potentially pay is 5%.
5%, which is a 2%.
What's the problem, 2.5%? Oh, that's 2.5%.
That's for the tax increase. So, you know, the school can say, it's only a 2.5% budget increase, but it's a 5% increase to the town because the other half of the revenue source is not budging up, very likely. Hasn't been.
And if that's
So what
half
you're
of
trying
our
to
money,
say, David, is the state isn't gonna kick in this year?
Right.
they're hurt.
No.
Yeah. So
No, I think that's where the voters need to come out and say no.
And we need to explain that very carefully.
Right, and, you know, there's people that feel that way about it, and I don't care which way they vote, if they feel that way, they've gotta come out and vote, and they've gotta say their piece. You know, whether it's just put their hand up when it's a no vote or whatever, and say nothing, but they've gotta come out and vote. You know, and Dave, you are right, David, that's a big percentage of the town's budget, absolutely it is. You know, there's no doubt about that. But people have gotta come out and vote. You know, and when have meetings like this, don't be afraid to show up, you know, how do you feel about it, you know, do you know people that feel the same as you and all, are they gonna come and vote, you know, it's great to have the input.
Any more other action items on there?
No.
New and
I'll
other
make a
business?
motion to adjourn.
Okay, second.
Any motions on our side? Do you wanna stay forever?
Nothing good, Jen?
I'm not gonna be able to have heat past 9 o'clock.
Moved and seconded to adjourn.
Move second, good.
All in favor? All right.
You gotta start.
See you, Lawrence.